Hello, BookTube. I come to you again with more new books. Uh, 4 titles. We'll work our way up from iffy to spiffy, starting with Stand By Me, New History of Gay Liberation by Jim Downs, purports to be a forgotten history of gay liberation. I haven't read it yet. I got the ARC and somehow it just got lost in the shuffle. I didn't get to it. So I'll be reading it for the first time in the finished copy, and I'll go into it with an open mind because the subject is, of course, fascinating, and will, by and large, elect our next president. But I got to say, the dust jacket copy, which of course the author does not write, but they do approve it, starts out, despite the tremendous gains made by the LGBT movement in recent years, the history of gay life in this country remains poorly understood. According to the conventional wisdom, after the Stonewall riots in Greenwich Village in 1969, gay Americans experienced a decade of political victories and sexual freedoms before the AIDS crisis in the 1980s, which, in the view of many, implied that being gay was only about sex. That is what is known in debating circles as a straw man, or perhaps even a whole elevator full of them. There's not much in there that's true. And if you write a book, tilting at that, you've got your work cut out for you, but what kind of work is it? We'll see. It's this thing is not very long, but it's very, very deeply sourced, and I like that. So I'll give it a try, and I'll report back. Next thing, not my cup of tea at all, but impressive. It's Emily Dickinson's poems as she preserved them. It's edited by Christianne Miller, and it's this just gigantic assemblage of facsimile reprints of Emily Dickinson's poems, scholarly, laid out with scholarly precision and parsed for their textual variations and whatnot. So I myself think that Emily Dickinson is a grotesquely overrated poet. I firmly believe that if she had been middle-aged and happily married with 2 children in Amherst, she would be as forgotten as her betters from her own time period are now forgotten. I'm the only person you will ever meet who argues that John Greenleaf Whittier, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow are better poets in every way than she is. She's been made into this picturesque figure of what people like to think the tortured artist is, and it's elevated her sappy poems to a height I really don't know how to explain. But even so, I have to admit, this is a scholarly landmark. This, if you like Emily Dickinson's poetry, and there are millions of people who do, I'm in a distinct minority, this is actually a must-have of a book. So in that sense, I heartily recommend it. The next one is Eruption by Steve Olsen. It is a new history of the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. I think this comes out in... oh, is that already? Oh, that's rare for this channel, isn't it? Yeah, this is out already. It's just wonderfully anecdotal. He takes all the stories of the people, so it's not just volcanology from page after page. He puts it in its context historically in a way that I've only read one other history of this eruption, and it didn't quite do that. For instance, he writes, in an era before cell phones, 24-hour news cycles, and the internet, news was slow to reach people downwind that Mount St. Helens had exploded. In eastern Washington, people going to church that Sunday looked to the west and thought that a violent thunderstorm was approaching. The ash cloud looked like an immense blanket being dragged over the sky from west to east. They learned inside of an hour that they were wrong. I have been way too close to 2 volcanic eruptions, and they're nothing else. Once you're in the thick of it, you can't mistake it for anything else. Red lightning, never a good sign. And the last of the 4 books is a wholehearted recommendation. It's fantastic. It's Far and Away by Andrew Solomon, the author of The Noonday Demon, just a wonderfully sensitive study of clinical depression, really eye-opening. And Far from the Tree, his study of the sociology of family groups that won all sorts of critical attention a couple of years ago. This is a collection of travel essays from all over the world, from Guatemala and China and you name it, over years. It's a treat, an absolute treat. You get a major author like this, you always picture them, that the next thing you get from them will be the next big opus that they produce. So to get something like this, well, I've read the ARC, and I will be reading this again because I will be reviewing it for, I think, the Christian Science Monitor, and you'll be able to get my full thoughts there. But I highly recommend it. If you see it, get it. It doesn't matter, even if you don't like travel writing, because he's just a fantastic writer. He can write about anything, and it would be good. And that's it. 4 new books spanning the spectrum. And we'll have more tomorrow. So thanks very much.